Each year, there's always a lot of hoopla about our Teacher of the Year. What makes a great teacher is next on The Inside Scoop. Hello and welcome back. I'm David Owen. You can hear The Inside Scoop now on iHeart Podcasts, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many other podcast platforms, including YouTube. Just make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode when it's published each Wednesday. Cobb works hard each year to find and keep great teachers. Together with the Cobb Chamber, we get to celebrate some of the best in each of our schools, but then we also celebrate the best of the best at each level, elementary, middle, and high. Finally, one of those is chosen to represent all of our excellent teachers we have in our district. Today, I'm joined by our district-level Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Karen Wright. Karen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is a first.
Well, very briefly, and you are not normally in the spotlight, right?
True.
That's a different life for you.
Yes, it is.
Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you came from, a little bit about Karen Wright.
All right. I grew up just outside of Chicago. Been here since 1989.
Okay.
I started out school here and switched gears kind of about 2.5 years into college and switched to education.
From what?
From interior design and architecture, of all things.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a big backstory to that one, but it revolves around my aunt, who was a teacher, who said that she thought I would make a great teacher. And I really wasn't sure about that, but here we are, proof that she was right. So I have a family. I have a almost 17-year-old son who goes to school at Etowah High School in Cherokee County. And
That's okay. We'll forget that.
Yes, I know. And my husband, Daniel, who is the outside operations manager at one of the marinas on the lake.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So we understand how you got to the Atlanta area, but what inspired you to become a teacher with Cobb in particular?
In particular with Cobb, my family lived in Cobb, although I was already out of high school, so I really didn't have a connection to Cobb schools. But when I started at Kennesaw State, started into the education curriculum and doing student teaching, I ended up in Cobb County schools doing my field experience and my student teaching. And so I got my feet wet there and really enjoyed the school system and the teachers and the leadership. And it was the only place I applied. So I was hired as a supply teacher in at Murdoch Elementary and went from there.
Okay. And you've been here, how many years was that?
Well, since 89, so
okay.
35.
That's a lot of years.
Yeah, a long time. More than I was in Chicago, so I'm probably a native now.
So you've had lots of chances to leave. Yeah. What has kept you here?
Well, I think I have always stayed. I believe in loyalty. I know that sounds really strange in these days and age. I really do believe in loyalty to places that have served you well. Mm-hmm. And Cobb has served me well. I have enjoyed the schools that I've taught at. I've had great leadership in those schools and within the county. I did at one point think of leaving because, as I said, my son is in Cherokee County and our breaks were different. So when he was younger, that was really a struggle. Now that he's older, he goes off with his friends and he just got back from his break and then I went on mine. So it's not as difficult now, but that was one of the reasons I had considered leaving. Yeah. But I just didn't want to. It's a great place to teach. We have wonderful teachers here. We attract wonderful teachers here, and we have great leadership. So I have just decided to stick it out.
Okay.
27 years.
I was going to say, you're getting close to that 30-year mark.
27 years.
Not going to retire anytime soon, are you?
Not until at least 30. Okay. I'll have a son in college, so we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, I can tell you it's not a fun time of life. But anyway, that's a separate podcast. Yeah. So you recently, this Teacher of the Year thing wasn't that long ago that you just found out that you were Teacher of the Year. Tell us about that day that you found that out.
So originally, as you had said earlier in your opening, we found out the three of us, the elementary, middle, and high school, that we had won at our levels.
Yeah.
And so that was extremely exciting and overwhelming and a whirlwind, as we talked about earlier. And then we got about 10 days into school, and our school does something called house teams, similar to Harry Potter, where we each have a color team. And so the classes are associated with a color, yellow, red, green, or blue. And every year we announce that color for your classes.
Okay.
And so we normally do this on the blacktop with these cool popper things, but apparently, quote unquote, they were on back order. And so we had everybody in the cafeteria for an assembly. Our theme this year was, or is, Make Your Mark, Believe. And so our principal had a magician come for the kids beforehand and before we announced our color teams. And at the end of that magic show, he said, well, we have one more magic trick, and opened up the curtains, and there was Superintendent Chris Ragsdale. And at that point, I really knew what was going on. And so, the media is immediately in your face, and everybody's at cameras, and everybody's cheering, and they whisk you up on stage. So it was a really, really exciting day, and a bit overwhelming.
I can imagine. Yeah. So how did that make you feel?
So on the school level, you're selected. You're nominated by a peer, or two or three, whoever decides to nominate you. Then you're voted in by your school. At that point, they ask you this question: do you want to run for Cobb County Teacher of the Year? And I remember sitting in book club with my kids, and my principal coming over and asking me that question. I was like, well, yeah, sure, And I finished up with the book club. And then you get the application, and you get all of these emails stating what you need to do. And it's a very long and intense process of writing and videos. And so after I was selected as a finalist, and I had to do a video and sent that in. And then you waited all summer. And so once you at pre-planning is when they announced the levels, and then again 2 weeks into school they announced a Cobb County Teacher of the Year. Okay,
so you found out that you were the school Teacher of the Year at the end of last school year?
April.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Tell us about that level winner day.
I didn't know that I had won.
Yeah.
So we were sitting in the media center for the first day of pre-planning, and my back was to the door, and my principal kept looking at the door and kept looking at the door and kept looking at the door. And we're all like, what is she doing? What is going on?
Very
and
nervous.
She made us wear our school shirts, which she never does. And so all of a sudden she says, and we have some special guests, and in walks the entourage of the superintendent and the media and my family. And it was extremely overwhelming, but extremely exciting to finally kind of see where this had all landed.
So you had 2 big days of revelation to you.
Yes.
Not the least of which is representing the entire district. Do you feel that pressure?
There is a little pressure. There's a little pressure there.
You represent a great group of teachers. I mean, unlike any other.
I do. It is. It does. There is a little bit of weight there that you feel just because, you go to your classroom every day and you do what you do and you go home. And now there's a lot of activities going on. A lot of people in my classroom taking video, taking pictures, interviewing me, interviewing kids, interviewing staff, which is very exciting for everybody. The kids. I think the kids' reaction to them announcing this was probably the most incredible part of it, because they were so excited.
Tell me about, I can't recall, did you mention what grade level you teach?
I teach 4th grade.
Okay.
I teach 4th grade. So, but the whole school was all 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade were all in the cafeteria at the time, and they were crying and they were shouting and clapping. I mean, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Really exciting.
And there's that personal connection with those students. They feel like it's almost an award to them.
That's right.
Recognition.
That's right.
So I know this is a long journey. This lasts for a year, right?
Yes.
So it may be too soon to ask you what's been the most enjoyable part. I guess maybe you haven't had a chance really to...
Well, I will say that the upcoming month is about to be very exciting because this is the first of a step. Well, I would say the week before break, they came and filmed in my classroom. That was really exciting for the kids. Interviewed me and colleagues, as I said. And then you sent the email and said, would you like to come to our podcast, which I had never done before. And I thought, well, that's really exciting. So on the 8th of this month is the handprint ceremony in Marietta Square. On the 21st is the Teacher of the Year pep rally. And on the 4th, we get our cars.
Okay. That's the part that most people would jump to. Yeah. But, I mean, first, all that stuff in between, of course, the podcast being the most exciting.
It is. It's something I've never done before.
Okay, the car wins. Let's go ahead and just say the car wins. But that ceremony on the square, the handprint ceremony. I mean, that I've walked by that. I'm sure a lot of other folks have too. And you see all these names of teachers that you just can't imagine how many students those teachers represent, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a bit
huge.
surreal.
So, just cutting to the chase, the car. He always says it. Our superintendent's a car guy.
Yeah.
Are you going to seek his advice for
Well, my son and my husband would really like me to follow his advice, but I'm a little more of a practical girl myself. Okay. And so, I know there's a lot of choices going on there. It was funny that Saturday night, I was watching the Georgia game. And sitting on the couch with my husband, and we were looking at the dealerships and the different cars that are on there. So, it's really just going to boil down to when we get there, what options we have. And there's a lot of unanswered questions that I have about how this works.
Yeah. That's a good point right there. A lot of people don't know. So maybe I should explain,
sure.
Unless you'd like to.
From what I understand, and I could be wrong on some of these points, but at the Teacher of the Year pep rally, each of us, the middle school and high school and elementary school level teachers, choose out of a bucket or a basket of a dealership from Ed Voiles, who I believe is a partner for Cobb Chamber of Commerce.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we then go to the dealership that we have chosen and choose a car that we get to use for the year of being Teacher of the Year for that level.
Exactly.
So that is very exciting. And, my husband's and my son just can't even believe it. Like, they're so excited.
How do I get in on this?
That's right.
Actually, they kind of do.
They kind of do.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's a free lease for an entire year.
Yeah. Insurance is covered.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that part.
I think so. I'm pretty sure.
Wow. Are there any things that you could say are lessons that you've learned throughout your career that have helped you be a great teacher?
I think I'm a realist, and that when you're teaching children, you need to be real. You need to connect to those kids. And I know that that's kind of the buzzword of build relationships, but this goes back as early as time with teaching children. The connections that you make with kids mean something.
Yeah.
When they know that you care, they care back.
Yeah.
There is a method or a philosophy that I lived by for a long, long time called the Prime Directive. And it is theirs to ours and ours to theirs. And what that means is that when we go into their world, into the children's world, and we listen to them and we hear about the things that they're interested in, the video games they play, the language they speak, all of these types of things, and we get to know them, and we genuinely show interest, then we have taken ourselves and put ourselves in their world. So once they realize that we are invested in them, when we want to bring them into our world to teach them the content that we want to teach, they're more likely to listen and be engaged than if they think we don't care.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So just something that I've always lived by. I really believe in connection with kids, getting to know them, what their interests are, like I said, their language. My almost 17-year-old son often gives me the new list of words. and what they mean.
He's very generous.
Well, because I say, what does this mean? Because I hear the kids talking about it. And if I don't know, well, first of all, I need to know what they're talking about. But when I use those words in class, kind of gives you a little bit of street cred. You know, they say, well, okay, she's interested. I can't believe she used that word, you know, and you use it correctly.
Okay, so that's the trick.
That's the trick. You got to use it correctly. Otherwise, they're like, oh, gosh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, you know.
Well, I was going to say it backfires with me. I've got teenagers, and they just look at me sideways. I'm like, I didn't use it right, did they?
Yeah.
Did I? And no, you didn't.
When they're talking about, you know, their sports team, or they're talking about Pokemon. I know I'm a fourth grade teacher, so you know those are the kinds of things I hear from kids, or the music that they listen to, and you genuinely can speak their speak, you know, and that they are sometimes dumbfounded by that. You know, she really knows what she's talking about.
You shouldn't know this stuff.
You shouldn't know this stuff, you know. Yeah. And so I think that when they do that, and when you share about yourself, I share a lot about myself, a lot about my childhood, a lot about my own struggles, my own, you know, issues growing up, and the things that I have been through in my life. And when you do that, they want to know more. And so I try to integrate some of those little stories into some of the things that I'm teaching. And when I do, then they respond.
Switching gears just a little bit, you have likely, well, I know you have dealt with tons of parents along the way because you've dealt with tons of students. So is there a particular angle or an insight that you could provide about what parents of successful students do differently?
I would say, first of all, we do deal with a lot of different parenting styles, but I think that the majority of parents just want what's best for their kids. They really do. There's a lot of struggles in our world. There's a lot. We never know what somebody is going through in their life. So I think that is very important to keep in mind when it comes to parenting and what's going on with kids and with their families. But I would say it is about looking up. And I mean looking up from your devices. Put those devices down.
Parents are the worst, aren't we?
Well, I'm calling myself out as well, because we are all addicted to those devices, whether it's for work or for pleasure or to disconnect or to connect. But the kids are watching.
Yeah.
Our kids are always watching us. They're modeling what we do.
Yeah.
So look up, put those devices down, talk to your kids every single chance you get. Point out what things are, when they look at an object. We see, I'm an ELA teacher, and we see with vocabulary that they don't know what things are. Point out everything. Play board games with your kids. Problem solve with your kids. I used to do, and I haven't done it in a few years, but I used to do a little program with my class called Old School Skills. And it was a list of 50 skills that I had kind of generated from talking to friends and family and the internet that kids were lacking. And some of these things were big things, like they can't change a tire. Some of these things were letter writing, or they don't know how to load a dishwasher, or do the laundry, or clean a bathroom. So I made this list of...
I'm sorry, you're just hitting all the check boxes for my family.
So I made this list, and I gave it to the kids, and I said, I want you to pick things off this list that you want to learn. And then I want you to find a mentor, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, an older sibling, someone who can teach you how to do these things. And then I want you to find a way to share that with our class to show us that you've learned it, that you've become proficient at it. And there were things on there like change a tire or lift the hood of the car. And these are 9 and 10-year-olds.
I was going to say 4th grade.
But here's the thing. If you don't show them, if you don't start to point those things out to them, they don't even know to ask. They don't even know to say, well, how do you do that? So teaching them to mow the lawn, to weed a garden, to plant a garden, to sew, to iron, I say if you, and this has been on the internet, people have seen it before, but if you can figure out how to turn on and set up an Xbox, you can figure out the washing machine, so.
It's not as fun.
It's not as fun, but
unless you like Tetris.
Right.
That would make sense.
But learning those life skills, I think, connecting with your kids, using your car rides to and from practice,
yes.
Put the devices away and talk to each other, look out the window, point at things, discuss what happened at school or what's going on. I think those things need to come back as much as possible. And I am as guilty as anybody of, scrolling away sometimes, but we really do try in our household, and I know I only have one child, so it makes it I come from a blended family of 8, so there are a lot of us. But putting those phones down and talking to each other and getting outside, playing the games, cooking, doing those things, and all of those things are learning. So I think those are, if I were going to give parents a leg up for success, I would say that is what you need to do.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you're not talking about sitting at the table doing flashcards all day so they're proficient at math or doing sight words or things like that. These are life lesson things that what impact do you think that is making on the rest of the learning process for your students? Do you think
I think it's huge. When they see that they can do those things, they know that they can do the rest of these. They can do hard things.
Yeah.
Again, another one of those thick quotes that we hear, like, you can do hard things. But until we get them outside of the classroom doing hard things, sometimes when they're in there, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. Yeah. Well, you don't know how to do it yet. Another one, you don't know how to do it yet. But I think it just gives them confidence. It allows them to take academic risks because they feel like, oh, it's okay if I don't do this right the first time. I have a big key on my wall that says failure leads to success. Yeah. It goes along with 8 keys that I kind of live by within my classroom. And that I try to point out to them every single day. Even though you may not have done well on this quiz, let's figure out what it is and let's go back and reteach and try again. But learning is not a one-time, one-stop shop. I always say when you those baseball players, I'm a big Braves fan. Go Braves tonight. Come on. That when a baseball player gets to the plate, they don't hit a home run the first time. The first time they step up to the plate, they have to practice over and over and over again. And that's what it takes for anything that these kids want to learn.
That is incredible. Now, I do have to ask this one very crucial question. Is cursive on your list of 50 things?
It is.
Is it really?
Actually, my kids in my class right now know how to write in cursive.
Hallelujah.
We started that on the first day of school. We started learning cursive. And they actually like that.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times we think that they don't want to do it. They wanted to learn.
Well, now it's kind of like a secret code, right?
It is kind of secret code, yes. It's on the list. Cursive is on the list. Letter writing is on the list. There are so many things on that. Tie a tie.
Oh, that's huge. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
For some kids, it might be as simple as tying their shoes because some of them, wear the Velcro and they don't know how to tie their shoes. So some of those things that we take for granted that, we just know how to do it, some of those kids don't know how to do. So when they've learned that, we celebrate. If it's worth learning, it's worth celebrating. So
would you be willing to share that list with our listeners?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Huh?
All right. We got that recorded. She's committed, so we'll put that on as a link in the show notes, and our listeners can make use of that. Spread the love.
Yes.
Well, Karen, thank you so much. We are so proud of our teachers, and to have you at the top of the list there for this year, that's awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was a really unique experience. My son was like, oh, that's really cool, Mom. I can't believe you get to do a podcast. I can't believe I got to do a podcast. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, it is so fun to show off our best. And if you found this podcast helpful, make sure you share it with a friend. They might find it helpful too. Also, don't forget, you need to subscribe. Give us a like. That helps with the algorithms and spreading the love. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you get the next podcast episode. Thank you for listening to this edition of The Inside Scoop, a podcast produced by the Cobb County School District.